Good morning and welcome back. Myself, Dr. Gibran Ahmed, presents to you Simply Pathology, and today we are back with a very important lecture. So, vasculitis, why is it important? It is important because it comes as a long question. Okay, it comes as a long question. Multiple choice questions are also set from vasculitis. It has been asked in the past. It will be asked in the future as well. Okay, so let us start without wasting any time. So, first we understand what vasculitis is. It is a vessel wall inflammation which is associated with fever, muscle pain, that is myalgia, joint pain, arthralgia, and malaise. Now, vasculitis can be divided in many ways. So, one of the easiest and the most commonly used way to divide vasculitis is the vessel caliber or the cross-sectional area. Okay, so depending on the size of the vessel, whether it is a small vessel vasculitis, medium vessel vasculitis, or it is a large vessel vasculitis. Similarly, depending on the cause, we can divide them into infective and non-infective variety. Remember, non-infective variety of vasculitis is the most common variety. So, vasculitis can be classified on basis of three headings. There is a large vessel vasculitis, also called as granulomatous disease, and the basic diseases under this heading is giant cell arteritis and Takayasu's arteritis. Then we are having medium vessel vasculitis. Now, depending on the pathology, we can divide them. If it is immune complex mediated, it is likely to be polyarteritis nodosa, and if it is anti-endothelial cell antibody mediated, it is Kawasaki's disease. And small vessel vasculitis can be divided into immune complex mediated disease, which comprises of SLE, Henoch-Schönlein purpura, cryoglobulin vasculitis, Goodpasture's disease, or it can be pauci-immune. It is ANCA associated. Example, microscopic polyangiitis, where there is no asthma, there is no granuloma. Then there is granulomatosis with polyangiitis, also called as vaginous granulomatosis, which is characterized by granulomas. And lastly, we are having Church-Strauss syndrome, okay, which is characterized by asthma, eosinophilia, as well as granulomas. Okay, so individually we are going to discuss each one of them, okay, and we are going to see individually what are the morphological features. So the four main immunological mechanisms behind vasculitis, they are immune complex mediated vasculitis, okay, anti-endothelial cell antibody, autoreactive T cells, anti-neutrophilic cytoplasmic antibody, also called as ANCAs. Now there are lots of MCQs which are based on ANCAs. Typically there are three types of ANCAs. P ANCA, called as P because it is having perinuclear, because it is perinuclear in location, therefore called as P ANCA. But this is now known as anti-myeloperoxidase ANCA, MPO ANCA we call it. Similarly, we are having cytoplasmic ANCA, which is primarily located in the cytoplasm, therefore called as C ANCA. But now we call it as anti-proteinase 3 or PR3 ANCA. And we also have atypical ANCA, okay, which is somewhere between P ANCA and C ANCA. Now, what are ANCAs? Okay, they are nothing but they are heterogeneous group of autoantibody against constituents of the neutrophil primary granules. What are the neutrophil primary granules? That is the azurophilic granules, okay, or the monocyte lysosomes and the endothelial cells. Okay, so these are nothing but the autoantibodies against constituents of the neutrophils. So the first variety is the anti-proteinase 3 or PR3 ANCA, also called as C ANCA. C stands for cytoplasmic. Okay, so these are antibodies which are formed against the proteinase 3 neutrophilic primary azurophilic granules. So among all the granules, it is the it is the proteinase 3 granule against which this autoantibody is formed. Now it is associated with granulomatosis with polyangiitis, that is vaginous granulomatosis, and these are cytoplasmic in location. Coming to the second ANCA, that is called as MPO ANCA or anti-myeloperoxidase ANCA, also called as P ANCA because they are perinuclear in location. So this myeloperoxidase, as you know, it is a lysosomal granule constituent which is involved in oxygen mediated free radical generation. If you remember the chapter on inflammation, you will know what myeloperoxidase is. Okay, this is also one of the granules of neutrophil. They are perinuclear in location and they show heavy perinuclear staining. Okay, what are the examples of this MPO ANCA? Church-Strauss syndrome, microscopic polyangiitis, majority of primary sclerosing cholangitis, IBD in IBD basically ulcerative colitis, focal necrotizing and crescentic glomerulonephritis, and rheumatoid arthritis. So these are the conditions which are associated with MPO ANCA or P ANCA. Now the first entity that today we are going to discuss is called as the giant cell arteritis. Okay, let us discuss about it. Now the most important thing, it is the most common vasculitis among elderly adult patients, characterized by chronic classically granulomatous inflammation of large to medium sized artery, but we will remember it is for large sized artery mainly. Okay, and principally they are affecting the arteries in the head region. Now the name temporal arteritis is not because it is a vulnerable, but cause they are superficial and most readily biopsied in making a diagnosis. So why they are called as temporal arteritis? Not because that the temporal artery is most commonly involved, but because of the fact that it is most readily accessible. So you can take a biopsy from that part very easily. So the arteries which are involved over here are the superficial temporal artery, vertebral artery, ophthalmic artery. Now once the ophthalmic artery is involved, it can lead to sudden and permanent blindness. Also the aorta can be involved. In case the aorta is involved, we call it as giant cell aortitis. Okay, the basic pathogenesis is T cell mediated immune response against vessel wall antigen. Cytokines TNF might be involved, and there might be a role of anti-endothelial cell antibodies as well. Coming to the morphology, it is a segmental process. That means the whole vessel is not involved, a part of the vessel is involved. Segmental process with focally distributed lesions with intervening normal artery segments. Okay, there is a characteristic intimal thickening with a decreased vessel lumen diameter, and classically we are finding medial granulomatous inflammation which is centered on the internal elastic lamina or internal elastic membrane with elastic lamina fragmentation. The elastic lamina has undergone fragmentation with infiltration of the mononuclear cells, that is the CD4 plus T cells and the macrophages. Multinucleated giant cells are present in 75% of the cases, and chronically healed cases will show medial attenuation, means the tunica media, they become very less, they become destroyed, they are attenuated. There will be scarring, there will be intimal thickening and fragmentation of more than 30% of the circumference of the internal elastic lamina. Okay, this is the criteria for chronically healed lesions. So what are the most important features? We will see granulomas, mainly granulomas which are involving the internal elastic lamina with degeneration of the internal elastic lamina with infiltration of mononuclear cell. Then there is an intimal thickening and presence of multinuclear giant cell. These three are very, very important points. Now clinically it is rare before the age of 50 years, so it is occurring in elderly patients more than 50 years. Remember, ocular patients ocular symptoms are occurring in 50% of the patients. Okay, and it is a very feared complication. Why? Because it might lead to diplopia, it might the symptoms might lead to complete loss of vision, which is the most feared complication. So we have to take an adequate, because the process is segmental in nature, we have to take an adequate biopsy at least 1 centimeter in length. The patient is presenting with fever, fatigue, weight loss. Remember, the patient will have a very common pain, that is a focal pain or temporal headache will be there. Okay, at the site of the temporal artery. Okay, if you touch the that particular part, there will be tenderness. So the most common symptom is temporal headache and focal pain. Pain being most intense along the course of superficial temporal artery. Okay, remember, jaw claudication is most specific symptom, that is pain in the masseter when eating food. Remember, though we cannot say that the superficial temporal artery is the most commonly involved artery, as I told you, it is not the most commonly involved artery. Why the name arteritis, temporal arteritis is there? The reason is that it is the most easily biopsied region. So even in the exam, if they ask you the commonest artery applied, okay, though it doesn't hold any significance, you choose superficial temporal artery as the answer. Okay, so if you can see this histological image, what are these? These are nothing but the giant cells which are present at the level of internal elastic lamina. Okay, so giant cells present at the internal elastic lamina, which is giving a appearance of a granulomatous inflammatory lesion. Okay, now this is we have done a special stain to highlight the internal elastic lamina. Okay, elastic tissue stain has been done. So if you see, this is the internal elastic lamina which is shown in black color, and at places that is shown in with the help of an arrow, you can see that has been fragmented. Another very important classical feature of giant cell arteritis. Yes, so there is a basic focal destruction of the internal elastic lamina membrane. Now this is the gross image. If you can see how there is a thickening. Okay, this is a classical giant cell arteritis showing a thickened nodular. You see there the arrow is pointing towards a nodular, that means a segmental nodular lesion. So it is a focal process. Okay, and tender segment of the vessel on the surface of the head. Now the next important topic that we will discuss today is Takayasu's arteritis. Now the clinical features of Takayasu's arteritis is very similar to giant cell arteritis. Both of them, they are granulomatous disease, okay? But Takayasu's arteritis is in younger patients, less than 50-year patient. So it is a granulomatous vasculitis of medium to mainly large sized arteries characterized by ocular disturbances and marked weakening of the pulses in the upper extremity. Therefore it is also called as pulseless disease. It is characterized by transmural fibrous thickening of the aortic arch and the great vessels with severe luminal narrowing, okay? So over here, classically, there is a full thickness fibrosis involving the aortic arch and all the great vessels which are arising from there. The most common vessel involved is the subclavian vessels. Remember, Takayasu's aortitis, okay, is very similar to giant cell aortitis, okay? On the basis of clinical features and histology, you cannot differentiate Takayasu's aortitis with giant cell aortitis. So how can we differentiate? Just with the age. So if the age is more than 50 years, okay, the benefit of doubt is given to giant cell arteritis, okay, giant cell aortitis. If the age is less than 50 years, you go for Takayasu's aortitis, okay. So the vessels which are involved in, they are the most commonly are the arch of the aorta and the great vessels, and among them the most commonly involved is the subclavian vessel. Now 1/3 of the patient will also show involvement of the pulmonary artery, coronary artery and renal artery, and so the symptoms are also similarly seen. So morphology, grossly, there are three important things. There is intimal thickening. There is marked thickening of the intima with destruction or attenuation of the media, plus there is adventitial fibrosis, okay, ultimately leading to a very little amount of lumen, minimal residual lumen. Microscopically, you will see destruction along with fibrosis of the tunica media associated with intense mononuclear cell infiltration and giant cells, similar to giant cell arteritis, okay. Now chronically cases, they will show chronic cases will show healing with scarring and admixed chronic infiltrates in all the three layers of the vessel wall. That is, there is a transmural involvement. So see over here, this is basically an angiogram. This is the arch of the aorta, and there are the three vessels which are arising from here, the brachiocephalic, carotid and subclavian. Now the arrow over here is pointed to the area which is involved. Similarly, the other arrows are also involved into the area showing the lesion. Okay, now this is the gross image, autopsy image actually, if you can see. So if you can see, there's an thickening of the intima, plus there is an adventitial fibrosis, as you can see with this arrow, and the lumen you can see has been greatly reduced. So this is basically the carotid artery, okay, carotid artery cross section taken at autopsy. Now this is the basic image. As you can see, it is also a granulomatous image, but there's a lot of fibrosis. So this arrow is pointing towards fibrosis. Then there are a lot of giant cells. So a lot of giant cells means what? It's a granulomatous condition. And there is a lot of mononuclear inflammatory cells as well, as you can see with these last two arrows, okay. So it is basically a granulomatous, okay, arteritis involving younger adults, okay. Now clinically, the patient presents with fever, weight loss, fatigue. Now because there is an obstruction or reduced blood flow in the upper half, it leads to a weaker pulse, decreased blood pressure, as well as ocular disturbance in the upper extremity. So the ocular disturbance can range from visual field defect, blindness and retinal hemorrhage. There can be neurological deficit. There can be claudication of the legs. What is claudication? While you are walking or doing exercise, you have pain in the legs. Coronaries, if they are involved, can lead to myocardial infarction. Pulmonary artery involvement can lead to pulmonary hypertension. Renal artery involvement can lead to systemic hypertension. The next is your polyarteritis nodosa. Let us see. Now we are starting the medium-sized vessel involvement. So also this is a systemic vasculitis of medium-sized muscular arteries. Typically it affects the renal and the visceral vessel. What is the viscera? The GI vessels, splenic vessels, pancreatic vessels, all the visceral vessels. Remember, a classical feature of PAN and also asked is that the pulmonary vessels are spared. Pulmonary arteries are never involved. There is no association with ANCA. Association with ANCA is not there. 1/3 of the patients are having an association with chronic hepatitis B. Okay, PAN is most common vasculitis which is associated with mononeuritis multiplex. That is a disorder associated with dysfunctioning of the motor nerves. Okay, mononeuritis multiplex is there. So in the descending order of frequency of the involvement of the vessels, okay, we are having the kidneys, which is the most commonly involved, heart, liver and GI vessels. So morphologically, again, there is a segmental transmural necrotizing inflammation of the medium-sized vessels with superimposed aneurysm and thrombosis. So there is a necrotizing, there is necrosis. Which kind? There is a fibrinoid type of necrosis. Okay, what is aneurysm? Means there is abnormal dilatation of the vessel because of weakening of the vessel wall, and thrombosis you all already know. Remember, again, only part of the vessel circumference is involved. Now the acute cases, they will show transmural inflammation of the arterial wall with mixture of neutrophils, eosinophils, mononuclear cells, accompanied by, very important, there is a fibrinoid necrosis, along with there is a luminal thrombosis. Okay, so this is very important, and ultimately chronically there is a fibrous thickening of the vessel wall involving the adventitia as well. So characteristically, very important point is that all stages of activity, that is from early till late, acute, chronic, all stages of activity will coexist either in different vessels or even within the same vessel, suggesting an ongoing injury. So this is a characteristic feature which is only seen in PAN, not seen in other kinds. We will come to the difference later on. Okay, now clinically it's a disease of younger adults. It is remitting and episodic. Okay, typically rapidly accelerating hypertension. It presents with rapidly accelerating hypertension because of renal artery involvement, abdominal pain and bloody stools because of GI vessel involvement, diffuse muscle pain, that is myalgias, and peripheral neuritis is there because of motor nerve involvement. The most common cause of death is renal failure. The most common cause of death is renal failure because the renal vessels are classically involved. One very important thing I wanted to suggest over here is that although the renal vessels are involved, okay, there is never a focal glomerulonephritis seen over here. Okay, no glomerulonephritis is seen in case of polyarteritis nodosa. More will be discussed later on. Look at this image, morphological image. If you see, there is a classical fibrinoid necrosis, as we can see, yes, and there is a thrombus formation also which is taking place, as you can see with the second arrow, and you can see there is only a partial involvement of the vessel. See, this upper part of the vessel is not involved, so there's a segmental involvement is there. Okay, and the whole circumference is not involved. Okay, so the classical feature is your fibrinoid necrosis, which is very important. So the most common cause of mononeuritis multiplex overall in India and the world, if the question is, the answer should be diabetes mellitus, and if it is amongst vasculitis they're asking, then the answer should be polyarteritis nodosa. Now the next important disease is called as Kawasaki's disease. It is very important question from pediatric point of view as well. Let us see. It is an acute febrile self-limited illness of infancy and childhood which is associated with medium-sized vessel arteritis. Okay, now 80% of the patients, they are younger than 4 years of age, and its clinical importance is because of the involvement of the coronary artery. Once they are involved, there is arteritis, that is inflammation of the coronaries. Then because of damage, there will be weakening of the wall leading to aneurysm. That aneurysm might rupture, or blood might collect over there, might lead to thrombosis, and ultimately might block it, leading to myocardial infarction. So it is associated with anti-endothelial antibodies, which is very important association which is seen. The most common cause of death is myocardial infarction because of aneurysm rupture. Viral agents will trigger the disease, or any other infection agent, but mostly the viral agents, they trigger the disease because of cross reactivity. Means the viral agents, okay, they went inside the body, okay, and antibodies formed against those viral antigens cross reacted with the vascular antigen also, and that caused the disease. Okay, autoantibodies against endothelial cells and smooth muscle cells also seen. Again, morphologically, you are having a dense transmural inflammatory infiltrate. Again, there is fibrinoid necrosis, but it is less as compared to PAN. And although acute vasculitis subsides, but whatever vessel damage was there remains, and that leads to aneurysm formation. Remember one thing, it is the age and involvement of the coronaries that separates Kawasaki from your PAN. Okay. Now the criteria, there's a certain set of criteria for the diagnosis of Kawasaki disease. This is actually more of a part of pediatrics, but I'm also discussing it over here because lots of questions are getting asked from this. So how you diagnose Kawasaki disease? So fever should be there, okay, of more than 5 days duration, and that should be associated at least with 4 out of the following 5 changes. What are those? Number 1, the child should have bilateral non-suppurative conjunctivitis. Okay, there should be certain oropharyngeal changes. So what oropharyngeal changes are there? 1 or more changes of the mucous membrane of the upper respiratory tract, including throat redness, cracked red lips, and strawberry tongue. Okay, Thirdly, there should be changes present in the peripheral extremities, like one or more changes in the arm, legs, including redness, swelling, skin peeling around the nails, and generalized peeling of the skin. Fourthly, your neck lymph nodes or large lymph nodes in the neck, okay, usually more than 1 centimeter in diameter, are involved. Especially there is cervical lymphadenopathy and there is a polymorphous rash. So these are the 5 important clinical findings that we see, and out of these 4 should be present along with fever for the diagnosis of Kawasaki's disease. Now the diagnosis can also be made, okay, the diagnosis of Kawasaki's can also be made if fever and only 3 changes are there. Plus there should be one more thing, that is the coronary artery disease is documented by 2-dimensional echocardiography or coronary angiography. They should also confirm that. Then only a diagnosis of Kawasaki should be made. So Kawasaki presents with conjunctival and oral erythema and blistering, edema of the hands and feet, and erythema of the palms and soles. Okay, so I will say again, it is presenting with conjunctival and oral erythema. Erythema means redness, and blistering is there, along with edema of the hands and feet, along with erythema of the hands, palms and soles, and a desquamative rash and cervical lymph node enlargement. Because it is involving the skin and the mucous membrane lining, that is why it is also called as mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome. Okay, because it is involving the mucus, the mucus layer, it is involving the skin, also the lymph node, therefore called as mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome. Remember, without treatment there will be arthritis, ectasia, aneurysm, rupture, thrombosis, MI, and sudden death. Okay, now we come to the next. Now we start with the small vessel vasculitis, the microscopic polyangiitis. Let us see. Now it is also a necrotizing vasculitis, generally affecting the capillaries as well as small arterioles and venules. So unlike PAN, it is involving the smaller vessels, number one. Second thing is that unlike PAN, all lesions of microscopic polyangiitis, they tend to be of the same age in any given patient, suggesting that a single episode of antibody or immune complex deposition or insult was there. So try to understand, in PAN, all acute lesions, chronic lesions, they were existing, okay, either in the same individual or in the same vessel. But over here, okay, they means they were not of the same age. Okay, so in case of PAN, okay, they were of different age. For example, acute lesion was along with the chronic lesion, but over here all lesions are either acute or all lesions are either chronic, but not mixed in case of microscopic polyangiitis. It is also called as hypersensitivity vasculitis or leukocytoclastic vasculitis. So let us see what is the difference with PAN. Remember, necrotizing glomerulonephritis is seen in 90% of the patients with MPA, that is your microscopic polyangiitis. Okay, it is not seen in PAN. Pulmonary capillary involvement is common in MPA, but it is not seen in PAN. Most cases, if you see, they are associated with MPO ANCA, that is, they are ANCA associated, but that is not seen in PAN. Immune complex deposition is very less over here, therefore this disease is also called as pauci-immune disease. You remember, there are 3 diseases which we call it as pauci-immune. In the first classification I have already shown you. Okay, no granulomatous lesion, okay, and no nodules or cavities are present in the lung, okay, which is present in vaginous granulomatosis. So there is also one condition called as vaginous granulomatosis, with which we have to differentiate. Okay, so in case of vaginous granulomatosis, we are having granulomatous lesion and we are having nodules and cavities, which is absent in case of MPA. Okay, so this is all about your MPA. Now, morphology of MPA, if you see, there is a segmental fibrinoid necrosis of the media just like PAN, with focal transmural necrotizing lesion. Remember, one very classical feature over here is that in the post-capillary venules, only infiltrating and fragmenting neutrophils are seen. That is why it is called as leukocytoclastic vasculitis. Clinically, the patient presents with hemoptysis, hematuria, proteinuria, bowel pain and bleeding, along with palpable cutaneous purpura. So these are the 5 important clinical features which are seen over here. So if you look at this image, particular image, if you see, classically you are seeing degenerating neutrophils which is present in and around the blood vessels. That is the leukocytoclastic vasculitis, classic feature of microscopic polyangiitis. Now the next important disease is granulomatosis with polyangiitis, also called as vaginous granulomatosis. It is a small vessel necrotizing vasculitis which is having a triad of necrotizing or granulomatous vasculitis of small sized blood vessels in the lungs and upper airways. Okay, acute necrotizing granulomas of the upper respiratory tract or lower respiratory tract. Along with that, there is a focal necrotizing, often crescentic glomerulonephritis present over here. Remember, limited forms of this disease will affect respiratory tract only. Now again, it is a pauciimmune disease which is associated with PR3 ANCA or C ANCA in 95% of the cases. Now microscopic examination will show granulomas with geographic areas of necrosis and accompanying vasculitis. There will be a lot of granuloma formation which will fuse to form nodules and cavitation. Granulomas will is accompanied by giant cells, epithelioid cells, fibroblast and leukocyte infiltrate. Renal lesions vary from focal and segmental necrotizing glomerulonephritis to crescentic glomerulonephritis. So if you look at the clinical features, usually involves the males, okay, and the average age is 40 years because of the pulmonary involvement is there, okay, is seen. So in bilateral pneumonitis and nodules and cavity lesion is seen in 95% of the case. Chronic sinusitis is seen in 90% of the case. Mucosal ulceration of nasopharynx is seen in 75% of the case. Renal disease is seen in 80% of the cases. So if you look at this particular diagram, if you look at this microscopic image, so again there is a granulomatous inflammation which is seen over here along with the epithelioid cells and giant cells. But the classical lesion, the gross lesion, if you look at the lung, see the granulomas, they have coalesced to form a nodule, and that has shown cavity, that has undergone cavitation. So nodule formation and cavitation is the most important characteristic feature of vaginous granulomatosis. Now we are having the Church-Strauss syndrome. Let us see about the Church-Strauss syndrome, also called as allergic granulomatosis and angiitis. It is a small vessel necrotizing vasculitis. Classically, it is associated with asthma. So there are all allergic symptoms: asthma, allergic rhinitis, lung infiltrates, peripheral eosinophilia, extravascular necrotizing granulomas, and striking eosinophilic infiltration. It differs from PAN or MPA by the presence of both granulomas and eosinophils. So in case of PAN, in case of MPA, there is no granulomas and there is no eosinophil present. So over here they are having both the granulomas as well as eosinophils which are present over here. Clinically, the patient is presenting with a palpable purpura, GI bleeding as well as renal disease, okay, that is focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, and they are associated with P ANCA or MPO ANCA. Now we discuss with the next important vasculitis called as thromboangiitis obliterans, also called as Buerger's disease. It is a segmental thrombosing acute and chronic inflammation of the medium and small sized vessels, especially the tibial and the radial artery, that often leads to vascular insufficiency, typically of the extremities. It is associated with heavy cigarette smoking before 35 years of age. Microscopically, they are there is an acute or chronic inflammation with luminal thrombosis composed of micro abscesses which is containing neutrophils surrounded by granulomatous inflammation. Now the inflammation involves the surrounding veins and nerves in course of time, and with time all the arteries, veins as well as the nerve, all these three will be encased inside the fibrous tissue. So clinically they present with Raynaud's phenomenon. What is Raynaud's phenomenon? Pain in the limbs, which is cold induced pain in the limbs. There might be intermittent claudication, that is the leg pain will be there, which is induced by exercise and that is relieved on rest. Thirdly, there will be vascular insufficiency leading to excruciating pain even at rest, and when this happens you have to understand that over here the nerve has been involved. Because of that, even at rest you are having pain. Also you might have skin ulcers and frank gangrene. Now thromboangiitis obliterans is also associated with HLA-A9 and B5, okay, associated with HLA-A9 and B5, important MCQ. Now this is a classical image again for thromboangiitis obliterans, also called as Buerger's disease. You can see that the lumen is occluded by a classical thrombus, and the thrombus is showing multiple micro abscess which is composed of leukocytes. Can you see? And can you see that the entire lumen has been actually, it has been obliterated, and again there has been a recanalization also. This is a classical feature of thromboangiitis obliterans. Then lastly, we are having one very important vasculitis, which is the most common vasculitis in children, called as Henos-Schönlein purpura. So it is the most common vasculitis which is seen in children. It is a small vessel vasculitis, okay. It shows a tetrad of palpable purpura because of vasculitis, arthritis, glomerulonephritis, abdominal pain. Renal involvement is seen in 10 to 15% of the cases, and the investigations of choice is thrombocytosis, raised immunoglobulin, ESR, as well as complement levels are normal, and there is mild leukocytosis. Remember, in case of Henos-Schönlein purpura, the purpura is not because of thrombocytopenia. Okay, it is because of vasculitis. And remember, in this condition there is no thrombocytopenia, instead there is thrombocytosis. Remember one important thing, in all the vasculitis that we have discussed, remember all the markers of inflammation will be raised, like the CRP, ESR, it will be raised in all the vasculitis conditions. So with this we end our lecture. Thank you very much guys for showing your support towards this channel, and you can contribute via the PayPal links given in the description box, www.paypal.me/simplypathology.com. and thank you very much everyone for supporting this channel. And if you feel that if you have gained something from this lecture, please do not forget to subscribe or like, and please do share with those in need. Thank you very much for watching this particular video.